Hi. Welcome, everyone, to our fifth genre series, All Tales. We have seven amazing storytellers tonight, and each storyteller will have around 10 minutes. And so please keep yourself muted until they're done, and then you can unmute yourself and you can scream and applaud and just have a great time and let them know how much you appreciate them. The chat is always open where you can send them comments, and they appreciate that. So we're going to start with our first teller, Mindy Donner. Now, Mindy Donner is an amazing puppeteer. I saw her video and it is just unbelievable. And she's worked with children and adult audiences for quite a while. Now, she's also an arts educator, and she had the opportunity to be the storytelling magazine guest editor in 2019, in the summer of 2019. Now, this is a tall tale night, but there is a fact that you need to know about Mindy. Now, her last name is Donner, so that makes some of you think, is there any kind of relationship to the Donner Party? And in fact, there is. In 1960, a cryologist backpacker was hiking up in the mountains, and he found this frozen block, and inside was Mindy Donner. He thought her out, and they fell in love. They got married, and here she is today to tell you a whopper of a tall tale. Please welcome Mindy Donner.
Wow, that's a hard one to top. Sally Ann, Thunder Ann, Whirlwind. Well, one fine early spring day, a day like today, Davy Crockett, yes, Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier, was striding through the woods, hoping to find a bear to hunt. And a sudden downpour stopped him, and he went to duck under a tree, and the tree leaves were not too big at this time on the white oaks, like little mouse ears. So he had to search out just the right tree to get some cover. And then he had a Zen experience. Oh, the scent of the rain, the sight of the rain, the pitter patter of the raindrops. He just went to sleep. Then he was snoring. Well, this went on for some time. When he woke up with a start, it was dark out. And then he tried to get his head out the crotch of the tree where he had been sleeping. He wiggled it this way and he wiggled it that way. He was stuck. So he tried for about an hour to no avail. And then he just put his pride aside and hollered, "Is anyone there?" "What's the matter, stranger?" That was a welcome and feminine voice. And then from his position, he could just see this extraordinary young lady. She was as tall as a hickory sapling, and her arms were big around as the keelboat tillers. "Oh, sweetie, if you get my head out of the tree where it's stuck, I'll give you a pretty little comb." "Don't call me sweetie. And you don't have to give me no pretty little comb neither. I'm not no shy little colt, nor little singing nightingale." And then this extraordinary young lady started opening the sack that she had brought with her. And then out of the sack comes a whole bunch of rattlers slithering up. And she takes them and starts knotting them together, one after the other, head to tail, and making a rope. Still she's talking. I can tote a steamboat on my back, and I can outscream a panther and double up any crocodile, and I can jump over my own shadow. And I like to wear a hornet's nest for a Sunday bonnet. Then she grabbed that rope snake and she sent it up like a lariat over the right limb of the tree, the offending limb. And she began to pull and tug, still boasting, I'm a streak of lightning set up edgeways and buttered with quicksilver, and I can outgrin, outlift, outpull, outthink, outlie any varmint from Maine to Louisiana. Then she gave a mighty tug. And furthermore, sweetie, I can blow out the moonlight and sing a panther and a wolf to sleep. Oh, well, with that tug, that offending limb gave way and bent down, and Davy took his head out as easy as pie. Then he got a good look at her. What's your name, ma'am? I'm Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind, but if you mind your manners, you can call me Sally. After that, Davy was crazy in love with Sally Ann Thunder Ann Whirlwind, and he went around asking everybody about her. He wanted to investigate her credentials. Well, he met up with the preacher, a highfalutin kind of man. Oh, I know Sally Ann. She can dance a rock to bits and ride a panther bareback. Then he went on. Oh, Sally Ann's a good old friend of mine. Why, I saw her once crack a walnut with her front teeth. That was the blacksmith. Oh, Sally Ann is so very special. Why, she likes to whip across the Salt River and using her apron for a sail and her left leg for a rudder. That was the schoolmarm. Well, just about then, Davy felt like he was receiving jabs from Cupid's own arrows right in the gizzard, or the gizzard. And then he talked to her friends. Well, her best friend, Lucy, her BFF, told that Sally had a reputation for being funny. Why, she can laugh the bark off a pine tree. And once I saw her whistle out this side of her mouth while eating out of this side of the mouth and grinning in the middle. And all of the friends told the story about when Sally was churning butter. Well, there was a scratching at the door. The door swung open. In walked the old king bear from the mud forest. Sally was terrified, but she had the mind to get a dumpling out of the pot and throw it up in the air. And then the bear liked that and thought Sally Ann might be just as delicious. And so he backed her up into a corner, and she could feel the hot breath on her neck. And so she put one hand on one shoulder and the other hand on the other shoulder and said, would you like to dance? Well, everybody knows that no self-respecting bear can turn down an invitation to square dance. And so they started up a hollering and hooting and a dancing around the room, dozy-doing and all that. And Sally started to sing, we're on our way to Baltimore with two behind and two before. Around and round we go, where oats, peas, beans, and barley grow. Well, the old man was kicking up his feet, and while he was doing so, Sally took a string and tied it around his ankle and tied that string to her butter churn. So all the time, the old boy was churning Sally's butter. Well, after Davy heard that, that was the final arrow. to his gizzard. Well, he thought she was the whole steamboat. Now, in California parlance, we say the whole enchilada, but they were from back east. So he made a decision. He put on his best raccoon skin cap and he strode through the woods, bellowing out her name 3 miles from her cabin, and she heard it. Oh, her heart thumped, pit-a-pat, 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 and she made herself look real nice. And then she went out and she put on her favorite hat, the one that was made from the eagle's nest with a wildcat tail like a feather. And she just waited for him. He came right up. Sally, my heart is busting. Will you marry me? Oh, stars of mine and possum dogs. Why not? And so the two of them were going to get hitched. Now, after that, Davy just couldn't act tough anymore around Sally. And all of his fighting and his hollering, well, that didn't disturb her any more than feathers dropping down on a barn floor. At last, well, that's what she would say. Maybe he'd say something else. Thank you, Mary Pope Osborne.
All right. How about an amazing storyteller?
Hooray, hooray, hooray.
Bravo.
Now there's a tall tale if I've ever heard one. Okay. So if you want to put anything in the chat, please go ahead and do that. Well, our next storyteller gets ready, and her name is Sally Holzman. Now, she's a Southern gal, and some of you may have seen her or at least been at the Contra Costa Hail Spinners, which she has hosted for 20 years. She, after retirement, is when she really got into the whole storytelling movement, and she joined StageBridge, which many of you know, which is an amazing place for storytellers to craft their work. She then began telling in schools and senior centers. And something that you probably don't know about her is that she retired. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but she retired at the age of 12. Because at the age of 6, she had developed this microcomputer chip before there was anything like that. And she found this guy, his name was Bill Gates. And she gave him the chip, sold it to him for $1 million, with the caveat that if he was to develop some kind of a thing that could use this chip, he would have to give her $100 for every thing that was sold with this, which, you know, is a computer. So, you know, she's a multi-billionaire now. And, you know, if any of you have any requests or needs, you know, just put it in the chat, you know, how much, you know, you'd like her to share her wealth with you. So please welcome Sally Holzman. Sally, you are muted.
I need to change my view.
Okay, here we are. We are ready to go with Sally.
I have no idea.
Good, Sally.
Okay. All right.
It's time for a new computer.
So when your volume, do you have the volume on your TV?
Right, but it does nothing. I mean, I could turn it. See, it goes.
Is that
it'll
mine?
go.
No, could everybody
But the
please
sound-
mute unless you're Sally Holzman?
Doesn't matter how high I turn up this because it does not going. There's no
It's just
audio.
not transmitting the sound, is what I'm saying.
We're hearing
Disconnecting
somebody.
the video.
Please mute yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
I don't
host just
know
needs to mute.
the deal is with that. Sucks.
Okay. Yes? Yes. All right. Well, I've put my millions of dollars away tonight, and I'm just coming here as a humble storyteller. So, you know, animals can talk to each other. You all know that, right? And hold on, animals talk to each other. You all know that, but there are some humans who think they can also talk to animals. People like whisperers and animal psychics and that kind of thing. Well, I knew a man who could really talk to animals. His name was Mr. Jim Baker. He was a cotton farmer and he lived down the road from us, and he was a good friend of my father's. When Mr. Baker plowed in the fields, birds would sit on his shoulder and nibble at his ear like they were telling secrets. If he went past a pasture where there was a horse or a cow or a goat or something like that, the horse would whinny, the cow would move, the goat would bray, and they'd run up to the fence and put their heads right on his chest and blow. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. Lost it. One Sunday, my daddy said to me, Sally, do you want to go see Mr. Baker? And I said, of course I want to go see Mr. Baker. I was a 6-year-old girl, and Mr. Baker had in his barn a pig with a horn in its head. He had dogs with 2 legs and 3 legs. He had pigs and roosters and chickens with all colored feathers. Of course I wanted to go. And so Daddy took me along, and he and Mr. Baker sat on the porch just talking, and I went out to the barn to play. And in a little while, I saw Mr. Baker waving to me. Sally, come on over here, Sally. I want to talk to you. Sit down, honey. Mr. Baker was really nice to children. Well, tell me about yourself. Mr. Baker, I have a question to ask you. Mr. Baker, when you talk to the animals, what do they say? Well, sweetie, it depends upon the animal. You know, some animals are not very well educated, so they just have simple words. And some animals have a large vocabulary, a good command of the word. And they, of course, like to talk a lot. Well, who talks the best? Well, I think it's the blue jay. The blue jay, yes, the blue jay. He has such a command of language. He talks like he's talking right from a book. His speech just bristles with metaphors, sweetie, just bristles with metaphors. And he has good grammar too. Now, some people say that the cat has good grammar, and it does. But I tell you, when cats get to fighting and scratching, their grammar is something. It just bothers your ear. It's so bad. But a jay, if he says something ungrammatical, he just folds up his wings and walks right out. Now I'm going to tell you a story. He's going to tell us a story. I'm going to tell you a story. You see that little cabin over there, that little log cabin? Well, all it is a little log cabin, one big room. And the roof. There isn't a ceiling anymore, just rafters. It's kind of old. And I was sitting here in my chair, just rocking, and I saw a blue jay land on the roof, and he had an acorn in his mouth. And he's walking on the roof, and suddenly he stops. Well, look at what I struck. And of course, when he talked, the acorn came out of his mouth and rolled down the roof. But he didn't mind because he was looking at the thing that he struck. Well, look at that. And you know what it was? No, what was it? It was a hole in the roof, a knot hole in the roof. And he looked at it, and then he closed one eye and he put the other eye on it. That looks like a hole. It's located like a hole. I think it is a hole, and I'm going to use it. I got to get my provisions for the fall in. So, that's a good hole. And he went and flew off the roof and got his acorn, came back and dropped it in the hole. And then he stood there listening. I didn't hear it fall. And he walked around the hole to the right. He walked around the hole to the left and listened again. Well, I'm going to try it anyway. It's almost winter. Got to get those provisions in. I'm going to give you a chance. And he went down and got his acorns and he went back and forth and back and forth. And then he stopped and looked again. What is it with this hole? I have put enough acorns in there to feed 30 people and I don't see one of them. What is it with this hole? I'm going to fill you, hole, if it takes 100 years. And then he really began working back and forth, back and forth, back. Must have been going for maybe 2 hours. Must have been. Finally, he walked over to the hole and he looks down in that hole and he comes up and his face is white with rage. I have put 30 tons of acorns in that hole and I don't see a one of them. And then, honey, the language that came out of his mouth, I couldn't repeat it for the world. No, no, no. And then he struggled up to the top of the roof and leant his body against the chimney, swearing, swearing, swearing. And a lady blue jay flew by, heard all that noise and came down and said, well, honey, whatever is the matter? And he told her, and she went and walked down the roof to that hole and she looked in there and she couldn't see anything. So she began yelling for other blue jays to come and they flew in and pretty soon, sweetie, that whole roof was just blue with blue jays. And finally, an old blue jay, a really old blue jay, flew off the roof and walked around that little cabin and then in through the door, because the door is just hanging on its hinges. And he began to laugh. Hey, y'all, come on down here, y'all. You got to see what this fool's been doing. This fool's been trying to fill up a whole room. Come on down, come on down. And all the birds came on down and they walked in there and they started laughing because, you know, honey, that's not possible. No, sirree. And finally, our old blue jay, our little blue jay came down and he walked into that room and he saw what he had been trying to do. And he started laughing and laughing and laughing and fell over on his back. Mr. Baker, is that a true story? Well, of course, honey, it is. You know, I told that story to that newspaper man that came through. What was his name? Oh, Mark Twain. Yeah, I told that story to Mark Twain. He wrote it up and he put it in the newspaper. He called it Jim Baker's Blue Jay Tale. Yeah, honey, it's true. Okay.
All right, thank you so much. Sarah, you'll be doing the next introduction of me. Eric is not in yet.
I'm in.
Oh, you're in?
I'm in. But
Oh, okay.
Whatever you like.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, let's spotlight Eric. So Eric was able to get in with us. So our next teller is Eric Hurt. And I know Eric from the Auburn Winterfest, where he told a tall tale on the spot. His girlfriend introduced him and said, okay, come on. She raised her hand when we asked her volunteers. And he won that Liars contest. And the next year he entered, he won that contest. And he's come to the Sacramento Storytellers Guild and won that Liars contest.
Wow.
So, you know, Eric has been dabbling in storytelling for the last, since the 90s. And he's been telling stories, and tall tales of local areas are his favorite stories. Now, one thing you probably don't know about Eric is that at 2 months of age, he began to walk. At 6 months, he read War and Peace. And at 1 year, he became a master oboe player. And at the age of 5, he formed a punk rock oboe band called the Oboe Duo. Now, you may not have heard of them, but they had quite a reputation. At the age of 7, he told his first story at Jonesboro and then around the world. So get ready for an amazing tall tale from Eric Hurt.
Hi there, good evening. If everyone can hear me, just put your hands up like this just for a moment. All right, great. Very good. Well, I'm very happy to be here with you all tonight to share. So another fun, true fact about me is that I was born in San Francisco, and I like to collect stories now and again from stories from the past from San Francisco. And well, I got interested in looking into cats because my daughter likes cats, and so I started looking into cats. And now I know that with cats, with boy cats, they're called tomcats, but did you know that with girl cats, they're called mollies? That was something I didn't know. And did you know that the best rat catcher in all of San Francisco used to be what was a big tomcat? They say that he was so big that the rats were like mice to him. And he loved chasing these rats. Now, most cats don't because, well, the rats, they bite back. But this cat did. And not only did he enjoy chasing the cats, but he also loved eating their tails. Now, why? I don't know, but he loved eating their tails. He would just slurp them up there at the end, and then he'd move on to the next. Well, this tomcat was owned by a woodcarver, and the woodcarver, he would rent out his tomcat at nights to the bars and the saloons and the clubs. And this tomcat, he could clean out a whole street full of rats in just one night. What he'd do is he'd hold the rat by the tail with his one paw, and then with his other paw, he would just, well, kind of play with it a little bit until he finished it off, and then slurp up their tail, and then he'd move on. And this is what he did with most rats, but there were a few that I hear that, well, got away. And for some reason, these rats without tails like to hang out down by the downtown retail stops and shops and stores. Now, why rats without tails like to hang out at the retail stores? I don't know. But I do know that San Francisco was filled with rats at this time. And as ships would come into port, it seemed like more and more rats would come into town. Unfortunately, there are very few of these rat catchers. So this woodcarver, he made lots of money off of this tomcat. Now, one day, this tomcat, he decided to head up into the hills back behind San Francisco, which at that time was just a town. Now today, where he went to, it's wall to wall, buildings and homes. But back then, it was just hillsides of brown grass. And he was out there chasing these rats. And well, after he finished off the last one, he started heading home. Now, back in these hills, people would set up traps to catch the coyotes that would come down to eat the chickens and the goats. And well, as the tomcat was heading home, he stepped in one of these traps and it just cut his paw off. There was no more paw at all. It was just completely off. And now I know what you're thinking, but it's okay. His owner, that woodcarver, he came and he found that cat and he wrapped up his paw, and then he took it home with him, thinking that, well, perhaps that cat's rat chasing days were over. But he started looking at that cat's good paw, and well, he looked at it and he looked at it and he thought, well, perhaps he was wrong. So he went over and he grabbed himself a piece of wood and he started cutting and carving and scraping that thing until he made the finest wooden paw that you ever laid your eyes on. And then when that cat's paw was healed, he took that wooden paw and he slapped it on the end of that cat's leg. And then it was like he had given that cat a new life. That woodcarver went back to renting that cat out to the bars and the saloons and the clubs at night. And from that day forward, that tomcat, he could catch no rat ever got away from him ever. Even the ones that gave up their tails, no, they couldn't get away either. And from that day forward, that tomcat, he could clear out 2 to 3 streets of rats at night. What he would do is he would take his good paw and he would hold down their tail. And then with his wooden paw, what he would do is he would bash their little brains out until they were all finished. And then he would slurp up their tail and move on to the next. Now, about July or so of that first or second summer of San Francisco's becoming a real town, a ship of cats arrived, and well, no cat could compare to this tomcat. You see, this tomcat, well, he was so famous that they called him the rat bashing cat of San Francisco, and perhaps you've heard of him because I never have. But those Molly cats, those girl cats, they would follow him around town all night long because they knew that with that tomcat, well, apart from the bars and the saloons, they knew that they were in a night, they were out for a night filled with clubbing. And it's my understanding that that tomcat never, ever disappointed. Thank you all. I just want to give that's called the Rat Bashing Cat. And I want to give just kind of a thanks to a storyteller who passed away in the 80s. He was an Irish storyteller by the name of Joe Haney. And this is an American version of his Irish tall tale. So thank you all very much.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you, Eric. Amazing. I just wanted to mention where our storytellers, which SWAP groups they represent. Eric is representing the Foothill Storytelling Guild up in the Auburn area. Mindy is, the famous Donner Mindy, is representing the Storytellers of San Diego. And Sally, who is the host of this group, it's the Contra Costa Tail Spinners. They all have great programs, and look at the SWAP groups and try and attend some of their monthly meetings. And now Sarah Armstrong is going to take over the MC duties.
Ed,
Yes.
can I make a little aside here?
Oh, that would be good. Yes.
We have the Auburn Winter Storytelling Festival's coming up Saturday, and Eric got a story in our local newspaper. Can you see? I'm sharing the picture. It's showing 3 or 4 pictures of Eric in a really nice story.
Yay.
So it's kind of an advantage to all storytellers to get to get a story out into the public like that.
And Sherry, will you go ahead and tell them about the day, and then put the in the chat, put the Auburn how to
Okay.
register.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
they're almost oversubscribed, but people don't show up. We're at 47 right now, and we had 74 register. So
I have 129 right now.
yeah, so
129
you'll get about
people.
100.
Yeah. So it's a Saturday, 11 for children's stories. Ed Lewis is one of our tellers for children's stories. We have open telling in the afternoon. And then Eric Hurd is going to be one of our evening featured storytellers. So it should be a good full day of storytelling. You can register at eventbrite.com.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. That should be a lot of fun. I'm signed up and ready to go.
I know. I see lots of names here tonight that have signed up. Thank you all. We're looking forward to seeing you.
Excellent. Well, now I get to introduce Ed Lewis, who is your host and the force behind the genre storytelling event. So Ed is a self-styled storytelling groupie. He goes to everything he can, and he tells all over the world, even India. He's president of the Sacramento Storytelling Guild, which he's representing tonight. He's also a board member of the Storytelling Association of California and one of the Pacific region liaisons to the National Storytelling Network. He's retired from his job as an early childhood education professor. And but before he was retired, he got to spend his summers telling stories to children all around the world. He's been sharing personal stories and tall tales to adult audiences since 1994, and now we get to hear his tale. Ed, tell us a story.
All right, thank you so much. The hags are coming. The hags are coming. They will be here soon. It was a typical Halloween day in 1955 on Lopez Island, which is part of the San Juan Island chain in Washington, just below the Canadian border. The gang of three met every day down at McKay Harbor and got in our rowboats to row out to check the crab pots. The first person to row was Ralph the Runt. Now, Ralph was 9 years old, and he was the smallest, so he rowed in the bay where it was nice and calm. But when we got out into the rougher waters that came in from the Pacific, Big Mike, who was 11 years old and strong and the toughest guy on the whole island, he took over and he rowed us out to the first crab pot. Now, I had the reputation as one of the fastest runners on the island and definitely the best balancing kid. So I was in the front of the bow and I stood up on that bow and I pulled up the crab pots. That was my job with that boat rocking like this. Now, the first pot, we had 5 good sized Dungeness crabs. And in the other 4 pots, we got 10 more. So we had 15 big Dungeness crabs, which we immediately rowed back, came up to my mom's house and dropped off the crabs because she made the greatest crab dip and crab feast that anyone has ever seen and ever will see. We had a little bit of that, of course, with Lay's potato chips. And then we headed down to Agate Bay for our fort. Our fort was built except for the roof. And we had to get that finished because we were going to sleep there on Halloween night. And we knew that our school teacher was a hag and she might be coming out looking for us. Now we knew that. No one else knew it, except a couple of our older brothers that told us about, that she was the hag. So there's preparations you have to do if you want to survive a night with a hag. So we had to finish the roof. We got driftwood and some planks and finished our roof. We went into the forest and got some ferns and nice grasses and pine needles and laid them down. Then we put our 3 beds there. We built nightstands, and on top of those nightstands, and remember this, you have to leave an open pocket knife. Because if the hag does happen to get into your room, you've got to slice away. And if you do slice one time, the hag will just leave in a hurry. And you'll know who that hag is because the next day you can see maybe that someone is wrapped up. They've got a cut somewhere. Now we knew it was our school teacher, and it was a 1-room schoolhouse with 30 kids on the entire island. So we did that, and then we did what else you have to do. So take notes if you need to. At the foot of your bed, you have to put your best Sunday church shoes out. Then you've got to take your paper matchbook, and you have to take out 4 matches, twist those paper matches and put them in your hair. Then you take a Bible and you put it right at the entryway into your room or wherever you're staying. Because what happens is, if the hag does come and there's a Bible there, she has to stop and read it. And by the time the sunlight comes up, she's not done, and she's got to scoot on back home, because if she doesn't, that's the end of the hag. Well, we had prepared all this, and then we went out trick-or-treating that night at a great hall. And then we came down at 11 o'clock and we hid behind some rocks and waited for the hag to come down. Now, first though, I had to run up to her house and hide in the willow tree to make sure she really was coming out. And at precisely 11 o'clock, she came out the front door and she peeled her skin from her head down through her toes off her body. And then she laid it carefully over her porch railing. and began shuffling with slime and guts and all kinds of things trailing behind her. She made her way right down to our fort, but we weren't there. She looked around, she saw the Bible, and she must have known that she shouldn't read that, and no one was there anyway. So she went to the next place, and at midnight is when she would enter the one graveyard we had. Now, some of those gravestones went back to 1820. So she came shuffling in. We hid in the caretaker's shed, and we watched her. And as she came in, she was singing that song, and you might want to join me with it. The hags are coming. The hags are coming. They will be here soon. Well, she came in and she went to a graveyard that did not have anything on it, because another deterrent for hags is to put something on the grave site, flowers, a memento that was important to the person, and then she can't get in. But dating back to 1820, there are plenty of unmarked graves. So she went over to that first grave and she started singing that song, and then she did what all hags do. She materialized down into the grave where she did her bloody work, which is to steal the souls of anyone who's left and any of articles that might have been left with the person, jewelry, cards, all kinds of things. And then she would come out, sing her song, move to the next gravesite. Well, she did that for about 2 hours, and we sat there and watched her. Now, then she started heading back home. It's about 2 o'clock. And we ran to her house and got underneath a willow tree and waited for her to shuffle on in to her house. And she got that skin. And I hadn't told you this, but what I had done was fill that skin with salt. I rubbed salt all the way through it. And she put on her skin. And I don't know if you've ever had slugs in your garden, but I know my daddy as a kid used to take salt and pour them on those slimy slugs, and they would just evaporate. And that's what happened to our school teacher. She just evaporated, and all that was left was a little pile of ashes. So we went to school the next day just to make sure that we really had gotten rid of the hag. And of course, our school teacher wasn't there. And if you ever go to Lopez Island in the San Juans, you'll hear the legends and stories about what happened to that school teacher. Maybe she was out trick-or-treating herself, or out just for a stroll along the cliffs, and she might have fallen off, devoured by orcas, the 3 killer pods of orcas that lived on the islands. But now you know the true story. And please remember all the things you need to do. The hags are coming. The hags are coming. They will be here soon. Thank you.
Oh, Ed. Oh, Ed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We now have one more thing to worry about and be scared of. So, gosh, I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. And if you have comments for Ed, and congratulations on his good telling, please add them to the chat. So the next storyteller is Dave Chittenden. Can we get Dave's spotlight? Thank you. All right. Dave was trained as an engineer and knew that engineers must tell stories that are effective, but the stories they told he wasn't so interested in. So he's been telling stories now for about 30 years with the South Coast Storytellers, whom he's representing today. And he's going to tell us an original story that's a combination of a dream and a nightmare. And it's called The House in My Dreams. Dave, please tell us a story. Dave, you're muted.
Yes, it's an unusual house. You don't see houses like this very often. It has 5 stories, and you can tell it has 5 stories because there's 5 rows of windows. And looking at those windows, the windows on the top are peculiar. They're different. They're actually like little circles and squares and triangles and stars. And looking at it from the outside, I always wondered, are those really windows? Or are they decorations just pasted on the side of the house? Well, the house is right up against the road. And that road, I wouldn't want to be driving on that road. That road is full of cars. They're going very fast and they're very close together and they don't like each other and they just radiate the hate for each other. Now, sometimes I've wondered where this house might be located, but after visiting Boston, I found out that's where it is. It's in Boston. Those Boston drivers are fierce. They're not as fierce as the drivers in Halifax, Nova Scotia, but they're very fierce. At any rate, you go up the steps of that house, and there's 2 big doors. Go through those doors, and the first thing you see is a staircase going up to the 2nd floor. Actually, I've never investigated the 1st floor of that house. I don't know what might be on it. But I've always just gone up the stairs to the 2nd floor, and then I turned around to the left and walked to my room. Now, my room is nice. My room is warm. It has nice furniture. It's really a wonderful room. But the other rooms on the 2nd floor are strange. I can't see them very well. They're fuzzy to me, like they're out of focus or something. And I don't know what's wrong with them. And I've looked at them for a long time. And I've developed 2 theories of what might be wrong with them. One is that these are rooms that I might have used in my life if I had done different things. But they were never used because of the path that I took. Then the second theory is that these are the rooms that other people use in their dreams. And since I can't see into other people's dreams, naturally, I can't see what's going on in there. Sometimes I see shadows on the floor running around, and I just wonder if there's someone in those rooms. I've been up to the 3rd floor too, and it's just like the 2nd, full of all those rooms with fuzziness. You can't see exactly what they are. I've been to the 4th floor, and the 4th floor is one big room. Just one big room with a nice wooden floor. It could be a basketball court if it had hoops at the ends. Now, one time when I was on the 4th floor, I noticed that there was a ladder that was leaning up against the wall. I took that ladder out and I put it in the center of the room, right below the trap door that went to the 5th floor. And I went up on the ladder and I pushed on that trap door to try to open it to the 5th floor, and it was heavy. It was very heavy. I couldn't get it. So I went down and I readjusted the ladder to a little better position and myself to a better position. And now I went up and I pushed on that trap door again, and this time it was light. It went right up about 6 inches, and I saw a pair of ankles. Well, naturally, I dropped that trap door as quick as possible and ended that dream, really. But the next night, the dream continued. now I went around to the back of the house. Now, back of the house had some stairs up, and the room that I entered was like a storeroom. It stored all sorts of implements for cleaning up: rakes, brooms, shovels, pails, sponges, all sorts of things you use to clean up. And you know, they were all new. They had never been used, because I don't do any cleaning up in my dreams. And then I went to the second floor, and much to my surprise, it was a kitchen. There was a kitchen, and it actually had running water, and it had a window. You could look out onto the backyard where you might see children playing, if there were any children. And I went to the next floor, the third floor, and it was one of those funny bedrooms that I can't see very well. I know something's going on in there, but I don't know what it is. And after I left that room, got out onto the landing, I noticed another thing I hadn't seen before. There was a door in the wall, one of those half doors like in the wall that you can pull open. And I pulled that door open, and I saw about 18 inches away, I saw the shingles of a house. And I came to realize that this back part was a house that had been added to the original house. That's what was often done when the child would marry. They'd add a house onto the back of the parents' house to live on temporarily until they could afford their own house. That's what that must have been. But then there were rungs in the wall, rungs on which one could climb. And I climbed up past the fourth floor. There didn't seem to be any way to get into the fourth floor. And then I climbed up further, and I got to the fifth floor, and there was a door. I pushed open that door, and there was the fifth floor. Big, empty fifth floor. Nothing at all on that floor, except there were those windows that were like the circles and squares and stars. And I really wanted to know, what is it with those windows? What is going on with those windows? And I ought to know. So I got onto the fifth floor and looked over and looked at those windows. You could actually see out of the windows. They were nicely made out of pieces of glass and different colors, really. And they were beautiful windows, crafted well. And then I looked back at the door I had come through, and it looked like someone was taking an eraser and erasing the lines of the door, so that in just a few minutes the door was gone and it was just a wall. There was no door at all. And then I remembered the last time I'd seen the fifth floor. I remembered seeing that pair of ankles, and I realize now they were my own ankles. Will you visit me? Will you visit me in your dreams? Will you visit me? I'm on the fifth floor.
Wow, Dave. Ooh, very interesting. Very interesting. Lots to think about. Does that house remind you of any place that you actually have lived in or known about?
Well, I lived in a house that had eaves closets, and it reminded me that there can be places in the house that you really don't know about. And there could be anything at all going on in there.
Well, thank you for your story. Very, very interesting. Please let Dave know what you think in the chat and any dreams you might have had about houses. And the next storyteller is Ron Chick. And if Ed is a story groupie, Ron might be called a story organization groupie because he's a member of a chain, Unbroken Stories, South Coast Story Guild, Long Beach Storytellers, Inland Valley Storytellers, Utah Storyteller Guild, National Storytelling Network, and the Storytelling Association of California, as far as I know.
I think that's everybody now.
Yes.
But if some other guild needs me, let me know.
Okay. He's representing Inland Valley Storytellers today. He's been telling stories since 1973, mostly in classrooms and semi-professionally for the last 13 years. So Ron, please tell us a story.
Well, this story is both semi-autographical, but the kernel of it, one big chunk of it, came from a famous Texas storyteller, Doc Moore. So you may be familiar with his piece, but not mine. I grew up here in Riverside on a 3-acre plot of land that had 144 very different fruit trees. There were 9 different kinds of plum, as an example. Now, there are good things about having a piece of land like that, but there are bad things too, because basically from early spring through late July, sometimes the first week in August, there was always stuff that had to be done. Fruit to pick, fruit to peel, fruit to boil to make the jam, fruit to preserve in different ways. We dried fruit and we put fruit into sugar base that made a wonderful topping for cereal all winter long. But it was a lot of work. But each year, at the last of the freestone peaches, would be ripe enough to be put away, and we'd get the great big long luggage thing and put it on top of the station wagon, and we put the mattress in the back of the station wagon. And we 3 boys would ride on that mattress, and my mother would drive us from Riverside first to Austin, Texas, where her father lived. And then after we'd been in Austin for a while, we'd go out to Lockhart, Texas, where the family lands were. My great-great-grandfather established the ranch there. Going out to the ranch was the best thing that could happen to a young kid growing up. Well, we only allowed to ride the horses if one of the stable hands was available to go with us, and that didn't happen very often. We could ride the mule anytime we wanted. That was a fine animal, very patient, and he'd walk us most anywhere, and he'd put anything on his back we wanted. We also played all sorts of other games. But there was one thing that happened that I really didn't like much. My little brother, my older brother, and both of my cousins loved to fish. Now, you may not know it, but fish know who the fisher people are. We would go up Onion River to the pond, we call it a lake in California, but they called it Onion Pond, and go fishing. And my brothers would pull fish out after fish, and my cousins would pull out fish after fish. And using the exact same bait and the exact same equipment, I would sit there and pull out nothing hour after hour. Or they might go down the onion, to try and catch other kinds of fish in the river. And the same thing would happen to me. So one morning,
Whoop, you got muted. Somebody was coughing and I tried to mute them and you popped up.
Ron, you need to unmute.
Yeah, somebody was coughing and I tried to mute them and then you got in the way.
Okay, I'm back. Okay. They said we're going to go fishing and I didn't want to go. Well, my brothers and cousins looked at me and then they dashed off to go up to the creek. And I thought, what am I going to do around here all by myself all day? Now, one of the games we had played a lot was King of the Mountain. You see, in the Texas hill country like that, you got places where there are little hillocks with trees on them and larger hillocks with several trees on them and grass. And then there are these little things of craggly stone, just bones of the earth sticking up. And at the top of one of our favorite one of those, there was a rock that we thought was about ready to tumble down. And so I thought, I'm going to get that rock down today. And I went out in the barn, I picked up one of the half-size shovels, and I found an old crowbar, and I went out and I started worrying at that stone. Now, I was just a little kid at the time, didn't work at it very hard. I also threw stones at different things and went up and down the hill and looked at the birds in flight and generally had a boy's way. But later in the afternoon, I was pushing at it with the shovel after I'd been crowing out of the crowbar, and there was a crack. And then that stone broke right off and went kabum, 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 boom, boom, the sound the side of the hill down below. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. So I took my crowbar and my shovel and I went down the hill to see where it had landed. I was walking toward where I could see it when suddenly I heard, no kid ever been in Central Texas not know what you do when you hear that sound. You stand stock still and you look around until you can see that snake. And then you try to quietly, carefully back away. But when I saw the snake, it was half under the stone I had rolled down. It looked so pitiful. I didn't want to kill nothing. I looked at it and I thought, I can't leave it here like this. That'd be just cruel. So I took that shovel and I got it to the top of the stone and I shoved it a bit. It rolled a little bit and I took off for ranch house. I was running as fast as I could go. I thought I'll be just fine. It's not that far, only a few 100 yards. But as I got to where I could see the ranch house, I looked behind me and there came that snake. I was running as fast as a little boy could run, but that snake was a whole lot faster. I was maybe 25, 30 feet from the house when it came up right beside me. And I stopped still, thought I was like, and I was standing there. That snake it wound itself around my bare leg and came up around my waist and came up to my shoulder and rubbed its little head right against my cheek. From that moment on, Hiss was my best friend. We played all sorts of things. You could roll a golf ball across the floor of the ground and he'd be off after it like a shot and bring it back. No problem at all. He loved to play hula hoop. Not playing with a hula hoop, playing hula hoop. You could put him in a circle with himself and you could swirl him around your arm or around your waist. And if you missed, the snake could catch himself and get himself around you anyway. Now, there was a group of kids up the street that had no use for these California kids that came to the ranch every summer. And one of them was mighty mean to me. One morning I was sitting on the front porch rolling the golf ball for Hiss. And one of them boys rolled up and I thought he's going to say something mean. He's going to do something mean to me. He always does. He came up on the porch and suddenly Hiss was beside me, coiled up and going, never saw one of them Johnson kids again that whole summer. Now, Hiss had a couple of bad habits. For one thing, it wasn't always convenient for someone to push open the swinging screen door, for Hiss to get out of the kitchen when he wanted to go hunting. So he took to taking and pitching his things into that door and pushing his way out. Now, you know what happens when a rattlesnake bites something. It swells up. It got to where that door wouldn't close properly at all, and there were bug problems coming into the house. And Adelina was upset, and Uncle Tony said, all right, we're going to take care of this kid. He took the door down and took it out to the barn. He said, now, this is turpentine. I want you to spread that turpentine across the bottom of that door. And every time it dries out, you put more on. And then in a little while, I'll come out here and we'll cut a little off and make this door fit again. And so I spread that turpentine. and I spread that turpentine, and I spread that turpentine. I got mighty tired of it, but I knew better than to stop. After a goodly while, Tony came out and looked at that door and thought, yeah, we'll cut just a little wood off. I think it'll be just fine. He cut a little wood off the bottom of the door and we took it back out. Only now there was a gap at the bottom of the door, just big enough that he could slide himself under. Well, Aunt Willana wasn't pleased, but they didn't want to replace the screen door right then. And so Hiss came and went as he chose. I told you he had two bad habits, though. His other one was a whole lot worse. There wasn't much traffic on the roadway in front of the ranch, but there was some. And when Hiss would hear a car coming, he'd get out and lie down by the road, and then he'd spring himself up and catch his fangs into that tire and go spinning around and go whoosh down the road like a hula hoop. It was fun to watch, but I kept saying to him, Hiss, you got to stop this. It's dangerous. Something bad's going to happen. But Hiss wouldn't listen. He just kept on playing his game. We were eating lunch one afternoon and sitting at the kitchen table when there was a car going by and then a screech of brakes and then nothing. Suddenly I knew something might be wrong. I hurried outside and there he was lying in the middle of the road. My best friend, Hiss, hey, my buddy and playmate, he was just a lying there flat as a pancake. I tell you, my best friend was just a lying there like I've been a lying to you. My pal Hiss, partly true.
Okay, Ron. Okay. So
everything up until the point where Hiss put his face on mine is the absolute truth. It all happened.
So who needs to be a good fisher person if you have Hiss? You know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. That was just terrific. Thank you very, very much. Well, we're almost at the end of our very wonderful evening. So our next storyteller and last teller of the night is Catherine Magruder. She's a native Southern Californian, comes to us from Southern California. She's been a Toastmaster for 30 years and is one of the charter members of the Story Masters group in Southern California. After a career in corporate finance, she created Catherine's Creative Communication Company with the mission to inspire youth to master public speaking and develop leadership skills. Catherine is also an author. Her book, When Henry Met Santa Claus, is out, and she's got one coming out soon, When Rachel Played Little League Baseball. Catherine, please tell us a story.
If ye be going to Scotland, you'll be hearing the tale of Angus Haggis, how he saved his wife Merida and newborn babe in the womb. It was a moonless night, dark and dreary, with a rainstorm of the likes that had not been seen in 100 years, when his wife went into labor. The midwives, they'd been worried all along, worried that the doctor would not get there on time, worried that the babe would be too big to birth. Too big because Angus was the tallest, the biggest, the strongest man in all of Scotland. He was so tall, he could leap the English Channel in one leap. He was so big, he could bear hug a whole village. And he was so strong, he could wrestle the Loch Ness Monster to the bottom of the loch. This way you don't see the monster anymore. It's a shame. The midwives were worried with reason, because on that moonless night, dark and dreary, with a rainstorm on the likes that had not been seen in 100 years, Merida went into labor. The doctor was not there, and the babe was too big to birth. It was then that Iona, the head midwife, spoke. Angus, Angus, open the door in the roof. Angus slowly opened the door in the roof. Angus, ye have got to be going to 33 Dunsbury Road, London, England, to get Dr. McGregor. Angus wiped the tears from his eyes, not wanting to be going, but knowing he had to be going. Go, Angus, now. Angus closed the door in the roof, and in 3 leaps went from Edinburgh, Scotland to London, England. 33, Dunsbury, found it. And in one wee step was at Dr. McGregor's house. Dr. McGregor! Dr. McGregor! No answer. Now, Angus, not being a patient man, lifted the roof off the house. You can be sure Dr. McGregor looked up then. Angus, seeing that the doctor was old and slow, put the roof back on the house, picked up the whole house, and in 3 leaps went from London to Edinburgh, put the house down next to his, watched as the midwives took Merida to the doctor's house. And he waited. And he waited. Angus, not being a patient man, lifted the roof off the house. Oh, it was not looking good for Merida. Now, at that time, the doctor, thinking, laughter is the best medicine. So he told a joke. What do you get? A lawnmower? The difference. Wait a minute. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, got it. What's the difference between a lawnmower and bagpipes? No one answered. So the doctor said, you can tune a lawnmower. Now first, the midwife started laughing. Then Angus started laughing. And then Merida started laughing and laughing. And then there was a rumbling, a big rumbling in her stomach. And the babe started laughing. And then boom, poo, woo, whoa, boom, pop. The babe popped out. And Angus caught the babe in his hand. And that's how, on that moonless night, dark and dreary, with a rainstorm of the likes they had not been seen in 100 years, saved his wife Merida and newborn babe. Oh, and Dr. McGregor too.
Oh, Catherine, fabulous. Thank you so much.
Bravo.
That was incredible.
Absolutely wonderful. What a delightful evening of tales.
And Catherine, I'm so glad to know why I haven't been able to see the Loch Ness Monster. So appreciate that as well. Yes, thank you. And some people here, Liz Nichols, for example, laughter is quite important. Thank you so much. So thank you to everyone. The Storytelling Association of California is just thrilled that you're all here and have joined us this evening. Now, next month's genre is romance. So if you have a romantic tale that you'd like to share through your guild or swap group, you need to contact Ed Lewis by February 7th, and we'll meet again together on February 17th for the next installment. So thank you once again. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you next month. Yay.